Welcome back to another episode of the Block Runner Podcast. I'm your host, William, always here with your co-host, Iron Man.
What's up, dude?
On the sticks, we got TJ.
Hello.
All right. Finally, we're back.
We're back.
We just did a recording. It
Yeah,
got heated, I would say.
Did it really?
Not really.
You were heated against yourself, I think. You're like internal.
It's like, come on, guys. Let's everyone understand like the fundamentals of ordinals first, and then let's not get bent out of shape when people don't follow the rules.
What do you mean by that? Just like the understanding that Ordinals is a metaprotocol, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, it's not like this deeply ingrained Bitcoin thing that some people think it is.
Like, you violated Bitcoin by deleting an inscription ID from your collection. It's like, no.
Yeah. It's just somebody just, like you said, went against the rules, and that's the case for all metaprotocols. It really is just this framework to just make sure everybody who's creating things are doing it in a cohesive, shared way, right? Therefore, that's the whole point of having like frameworks and standards, right? It's a similar thing with DMT.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. If we want to leverage blockchain data for whatever purpose, we think that's a good idea. And I think others do as well.
Right.
So it's like, hey, man, there should probably be like a meta protocol framework to like do these types of activities. So
right.
Hence DMT. So we're here, right? So people could break that, like you were saying in that video. People have broken that completely. And they're now dead in the water as a result because you're going against, the ethos, dude. The whole point of the damn thing.
Yeah.
Whole point of the ecosystem. So typical invisible hand stuff. This is just what happens in markets, dude. Like, so everybody needs to like calm down. Not like
pretty much.
Just going through Twitter definitely had like sky is falling vibes. Everyone's out there like posting. It's like, dude, we need to band together against these centralized operators. It's like, God damn, guys, just fucking chill out. Yeah. What are you guys gonna do when you get rid of Magic Eden?
Yeah.
How are you going to build a market around this idea of ordinals? You get rid of the fucking marketplaces and stuff. Then what? What are you guys going to actually do? Sit in your hands and just talk about how cool and glorious we are because we killed the marketplaces? Like, come on, man. You guys are losing it out there. You're losing the point.
Yeah.
Like, sorry. It's just not going to happen, fellas. Right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I don't know. It feels like we're running out of stuff to talk about. So any little thing is like...
Not us. We got plenty of stuff to talk about.
Well,
yeah,
not us,
the
but
market.
The market, yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, everyone's pushing their like arbitrary collections, which is totally fine. It's just unfortunately, it's just not interesting.
Yeah, so we're gonna keep beating that drum, right? This is the drum of like when are people gonna realize like it's only the new stuff should really.
You know what? I think it's something to talk about though, like to really understand like what Ordinals is.
Okay.
Right. Should we just pop the bubble, dude?
I don't even know what you're talking about. But if you got a bubble to pop, dude, feel free. I'm sure that would be very relieving for you. Have at it, dude. Take a stab.
All right. So let's talk about ordinals, though. All right. So ordinals, the ordinal theory. If you look at the handbook, it's pretty handy, right? You should read it. And
it is.
And ordinals is just a meta protocol. That's it, right? There's nothing glorious about it. It's just a meta protocol. It's just a set of rules. And those set of rules have been programmed into a client that people can run on top of the Bitcoin Core client. Okay, so cool. It's a set of rules. Easy enough, right? But what is a meta protocol, though? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like, it sounds fancy. It sounds advanced, but what is it? Right? So a meta protocol is a set of rules programmed into a system, right? And those rules include the inscription ID. They include the assigning of an ID to a Satoshi, right? So there's all these like aspects that make ordinals function that aren't really real. Like in the sense of real, like you're not going to find a Satoshi ID within Bitcoin's like block data.
Okay.
Satoshi IDs aren't real. They're just the part of the meta protocol that help assign an ID to a Satoshi that is held within a UTXO, which is like an envelope. And then that envelope and that Satoshi can be assigned to arbitrary data that's injected into Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, if you can move the envelope, you're moving who owns the arbitrary data on Bitcoin, right? So if I send you that UTXO, which is about the size of 546 Satoshis, which is in that envelope. So one of those Satoshis is that ID that has assigned the arbitrary data. I send you that envelope.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you have ownership of that ordinal.
Correct.
And that's it. All right. So Satoshis aren't real. What else? Inscription IDs aren't real. Inscription numbers aren't real. These are just part of the meta protocol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but what's that threshold of like what's real or not? Just because it's not.
Well, okay, so real.
Yeah, I think you need to use real is
real is
touchy word.
Data that's embedded into Bitcoin, stuff that has been thermodynamically locked with each other in a blockchain. That is the real data.
Okay, so it's like it's the propagation of the data that is, I guess, what relayed and generated from the Bitcoin core code,
yes.
The protocol of that.
Yes,
like that's the framework of the protocol. That
yeah.
But why is that like because of its 15-year history and all the thermodynamic properties that maintain that, right? That and from your perspective, that's the real.
And so when I mean real, it's specifically data that's part of the blockchain. That's what I mean real. Real doesn't mean better or, everything else is irrelevant. Like Ordinal theory, the metaprotocol is actually a very big deal, right? So real so don't misunderstand that.
Right.
So Ordinal theory is a very big deal because it allows us to actually use UTXOs and assign arbitrary data in a metaprotocol. It's like,
so you're saying from like if the protocol was able to observe itself like Bitcoin, it would only be seeing like these UTXO transactions and not know anything else outside of that, right?
Right.
Like it is the metaprotocol that now we're able to, I guess, interpret like an understanding of what these individual sats are, right? So therefore,
correct.
That's what makes it like not real in a sense because it doesn't have the same like security as Bitcoin data.
Correct.
Okay.
So now the arbitrary data that you inject into Bitcoin, that is thermodynamically locked.
Yes.
Right. You cannot just change that data. If you could, all of Bitcoin would be over.
Yeah.
Right. So the data you're injecting, that is as real as it gets.
Okay.
Right.
So what is the bubble that was popped? What are people
just
thinking
the understanding of like Ordinals is like something that's like Bitcoin and like it's a part of Bitcoin. It's a thing that sits on top of Bitcoin.
But doesn't that make it part of Bitcoin, dude? Ultimately, it's still like contributing to. Like,
well, it is. You're contributing additional transaction volume within Bitcoin, thereby securing Bitcoin. But inscription IDs aren't real. Satoshis aren't real. I mean, the Satoshi IDs aren't real.
Yeah, I guess. But they are real, right? They're just not real.
They're real
to Bitcoin.
They're real to the meta protocol. Yes.
Yeah. I guess it's just if anybody doesn't have that like separation, I guess, in their minds, which I don't know if it needs to be or not, right?
I mean, not necessarily, but if you really want to understand like what is Ordinals, you need to understand this stuff.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we got a bull market on the way, and a lot of these newly onboarded like ecosystem participants, they're going to be confronted with this idea of a meta protocol for the first time.
Yeah.
Right. Because previous cycles is like the new thing that everybody had to familiarize yourself with is like blockchain. Right.
Yeah.
We're cooking up new blockchains and like new L2 chains. And, we need to learn about rollups and ZK proofs. Like those are the new things of like the previous cycles. Right. This meta protocol thing. I mean, I guess we are pretty familiar with it.
Yeah.
Because we've been tinkering with this stuff for a year and a half now. But the expectation is like what's being built within the Bitcoin ecosystem is going to be like front and center at some point.
Sure.
I think that's a safe assumption. It's why we're all paying attention to it, right? Because everything that's happened since the introduction of Ordinals is new stuff to us, right? So we were able to be early identify this thing. It's like, dude, this is new. Meta protocols, I never really was exposed to that, right? So
right.
So we're early. So the point is the stuff has to be pretty clear for like the next generation of people onboarding, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
but for what purpose? Okay, now you understand what a meta protocol does.
Well, then you would, if you understand this, you would understand that, marketplaces and how they work. Inscription IDs can be the collections. The inscription IDs in a collection can be changed.
Okay.
Right, and it's all sort of like typically when you do like a 10K collection in Ordinals, it's just like you submit pictures into Bitcoin, the arbitrary data, right? You submit them.
Yeah.
And then when you submit them, you get an inscription ID, which is it's an ID that assigns the arbitrary data within this meta protocol.
Yeah, with that, now you can interpret what that SAT is, right? like
Well,
to an
yeah.
explorer or whatever.
You can interpret it, but you can also understand where it is.
Okay.
Like you can know things about
Well,
it.
that's what makes it real now. Is that inscription ID and the Metaprotocol's ability to.
Well, still we've defined real, right?
I don't know if we have.
So
Okay.
inscription IDs
Yeah.
are not thermodynamically locked.
Okay, so that's the definition of real in the context of that.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Continue.
Yeah. So within inscription ID, you can find what that data is, right?
Mhm,
You can so there's a lot of value in that. And so with that, you can take this information and just create a whole ecosystem. And up until now, we have 75 million inscription IDs.
Yeah. So it's working, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So in the context of like the Metaprotocol space, this stuff is as real as it gets as well, right? It's just doesn't share those same.
Yeah, but we're all under the collective understanding of following the rules, and we're just playing by the rules, and that's it. There's nothing beyond that.
Was that any different than like so?
It's like playing basketball or playing football. You just play by the rules.
Mhm.
Like you can't just like go out of bounds and like score a touchdown and like all of a sudden you're like celebrating. It's like, no, dude, you stepped out of bounds.
Yeah, but Bitcoin has this different thing to it, right? It has its own rules, but it's unbreakable rules.
That's right.
So like that's so you're right. It needs to be well understood that there's a difference here because the Ordinals crowd, the ecosystem, whatever, they're gonna do everything in their power to try and convince like the degens of all the other ecosystems that like this is a new way of doing things that share the same like unbreakability, I guess, of Bitcoin. But as we're seeing, it's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
Right. For the reasons, because it's not. If you understand metaprotocols, you understand that these rules can be broken. Right.
Yeah. The coolest part about the ordinal theory is the ability to inject arbitrary data into Bitcoin. That is cool, right?
Yeah.
Because that article that you inject into Bitcoin, that image, that picture, that JSON, whatever it is you inject into Bitcoin, it is there forever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's cool.
Yeah.
And then you can take that concept, the storage of it, you can assign a Satoshi ID to it, and therefore assign an inscription ID that allows you to like track where it is and who owns it. And all of a sudden you can trade these assets. That's a very cool thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, it's just, I don't know. This is just us, I guess, reacting to a lot of bickering in the space around this, right? Because I don't know. I guess the bickering is somebody violated the rules and therefore it kind of like exposed that the ethos isn't as pure as people would like it to appear.
I feel like, there's like a misunderstanding of like what this was.
What, Ordinals?
Yeah, like the fact that you can the violations, like obviously it's like, yeah, I mean, you could just, because ultimately when you create a 10K collection, just an arbitrary 10K collection, you just like submit 10,000 items into Bitcoin. However way you do it, you submit 10,000 items, and then you just create a PSBT, which is a partially signed Bitcoin transaction, and you list all 10,000 items on a marketplace, and then that you do your sale, right? So when you do that, other people are also injecting data into Bitcoin, and so your inscription IDs aren't from like 1 to 10,000, right? They're just like, it's just weird numbers because there's so many other data injected as people are injecting stuff using the ordinal theory, right? So then as a creator, you have to go and find and track each inscription ID that is part of your collection. So now you have 10,000 numbers, you're sending it to a marketplace. It's like, here's my collection. And then people are surprised that you can just like remove inscription IDs because of this guy got hacked, or I don't like this guy, or whatever.
Well, that's all a problem because of Magic Eden's process, essentially, of like relying on this metadata upload format to understand like what is a collection and what is not, or what is part of a collection and what is not. But that doesn't mean like the front end interface experience of the future can't readjust or adapt to a parent-child, like strictly only, I guess, like ecosystem standard, right? Which I think is now like what's being pushed.
Right, but even if you do that, you can still, you could still ignore it, right? You could just go outside of the rules again.
Who's ignoring it? Imagine
the marketplaces,
the front end providers.
Yeah,
right.
So it's
But that would be like, because I feel like it's easier to ignore whenever you're kind of
manually doing everything.
yeah. It's like you can't really ignore. Like,
Yeah, but the point is, it can be
it
ignored.
can be, but I feel like that's an even bigger violation, a bigger like finger, I guess, at like the front end provider.
I mean, what is Magic Eden supposed to do? Is like the creator told me that inscription ID is no longer good. Am I supposed to like vet everything now? That's the response.
I think the point is like the creators can't tell me anymore at the point, right? If there's like an officially understood provenance, like understanding,
right? But then again,
you can't disrupt that.
Child inscriptions is not the only way to do stuff on ordinal theory.
Right. Yeah, locking the whole like market.
Imagine
that.
Yeah, imagine if parent-child was the only way to do stuff, right? The only way. Just imagine if that was actually possible. And Bitoshi comes in and says, "Hey, you know what? I want to do this metaverse thing. It's like I'm going to create the first bitmap, and then I'm going to create all child inscriptions of that bitmap, and then they're all going to represent the block data on Bitcoin." How would he do that?
Too expensive.
That's 800,000 inscriptions as children.
Yeah,
that's millions of dollars worth of transaction fees.
Correct.
You wouldn't be able to do that.
It's not efficient,
and it's not, therefore, not interesting. If you can't do something like bitmap on ordinal theory and on Bitcoin, it's not interesting.
Well, it just wouldn't happen. Period, because it's a non-starter.
Yeah,
that's true. So, man, that's quite a lot of fucking that's a lot of mess. But nobody really has a clear solution. It's just we're at the point where.
But there is a solution.
Oh, is there? Okay,
there is.
All right.
You just let it play out. Whatever it is people want to do, Magic Eden, creators, they want to ignore, they want to add, they want to pin, just let it happen, right? Who cares, right? If you as a holder of an asset as the creator, and they start doing like malicious stuff like ignoring inscription IDs, sell the stuff and just move on. It's like you just don't agree with it, you just vote with your Satoshis and that's it.
So is the problem really more so like the I guess the gatekeepers of these narratives and such? Like that's the real problem. It's like you guys need to kind of like lessen your stance on like what is and isn't like a proper utilization of ordinals.
Yeah,
that's what that could be the
It's like trying to maintain this like facade is my point.
Yeah,
it's like, dude, just let it. Whatever people want to do, just let it happen.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's kind of what's happening in the.
It is what's happening anyways, right? So
yeah. So pushing people is like the sentiment is you should only just use parent-child. It's never going to happen. There's no way like everybody's going to agree to that.
I mean, imagine
some people will for sure.
Imagine you have a community of 10K, like 5,000 holders, and one of your top guys gets hacked, right? And they stole 20 of them, 100 of them, whatever. And the community says, you know what? This is a tragedy. This is an injustice. You know, I think we should ignore those inscription IDs for the sake of the community. And they all agree. And then the creator says, you know what? I agree. So I'm going to go to Magic Eden, do a little edit, gone. What's wrong with that? What is wrong with that?
Fucks with the ethos, dude.
No. What is wrong? What's wrong with that? If everyone agrees.
Oh, if everyone agrees.
If the community of that collection agrees that those should be ignored. What is wrong with that?
I don't know. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Isn't that kind of like what happened with Ethereum and like the DAO hack?
Exactly, dude.
Yeah.
Ethereum, by the way, is like $250 billion.
Yeah.
And they edited the blockchain. And look at him.
Yeah.
Now Vitalik is singing. He's singing right now.
Singing and dancing, dude.
It's bullish.
That's the real reason why all numbers are going up, right?
Yeah.
Because of Vitalik. Yeah, man. He came in to save the day once again.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But there's a little... Yeah, so I guess watch that video that was posted a couple of days ago because go into how like DMT's a little interesting little side note of another like provenance angle, I guess that's more.
Yeah, and DMT is still susceptible to this too. By the way,
exactly.
Like we're not like a high horse here.
Well, yeah, it's another metaprotocol, just like Ordinals.
It's just another metaprotocol, exactly.
Yeah. So I mean,
and this situation sort of happened to a certain degree, right?
Yeah.
So the point of DMT is that there's a non-arbitrary expansion based off the existence of the pattern occurring again in the future, right? And so this collection said, you know what? I'm going to ignore all future occurrences. right? I just don't care, right? Because it's my collection and I'm better than everybody, and I'm just gonna ignore it.
Yeah.
Right? So they did. You know what everyone else did? They just like completely dumped it and they forgot about it. Like nobody talks about that collection anymore.
Correct. Yep.
And that's supposed to happen, right? If you are part of an ecosystem and you agree with the rules, like this is a fun rule set to play with. If someone violates it, you just ignore them.
Yeah.
You forget about them. That's it.
Correct. Yep. I think you're totally right, dude. Settled.
It is settled.
Okay.
I mean, it has always been settled. It's just people are just like, but the ethos, bro.
I know. Yeah, I think that a lot of that is just dependent and rooted on the fact that, the lack of quality production of things is
I totally agree.
We need to root more on this like killer narrative. It's like, it's all truly on-chain, immutable, unbreakable stuff here in Bitcoin land.
Yeah.
And then with trying the best, like not to expose these I guess FUD vectors, right?
Yeah.
In an attempt to try and create this facade. It's like so the product won't sell itself, but the narrative for sure will bring people in, right? So
and dude, that's part of our criticism of like Ordinals is very cool.
Yeah.
But it hasn't really done anything specifically new.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
and so if you're gonna if you guys are depending on like this narrative to like push it through, it's not going to work.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's people are not gonna they're not gonna buy it, dude.
No, they're not gonna buy your picture that's on Bitcoin just because you put it on Bitcoin. It's not good enough.
Correct. Yeah, I don't think people were buying NFTs because of some ethos or narrative really of like the whole on-chain ownership thing. It was the introduction of like a new digital product that people never were exposed to.
It's a new asset that they can play with.
I think so. I think it was pretty cool. And so Ordinals, like you're saying, as cool as it is, there's really nothing truly new other than DMT, right? Like this additional extension to Ordinals, which is another meta protocol, another set of rules.
Yeah. And we say that because there's never been there's never been some sort of project or meta protocol that has used blockchain data in the way that we're using it with DMT, right? And it's completely non-arbitrary. There's an exactly good parallel to thermodynamics and second law of thermodynamics and physics and all that. But
it's really the experience, the product of the experience. Like whenever people utilize this stuff, specifically in the metaverse, right? Like we've all interacted or interfaced within, well, not all of us, but a lot of us, if we have backgrounds in MMORPGs and such, we know what to expect in these virtual environments, right? The idea of like, I'm in a digital layer, all these digital goods and commodities and stuff that I'm going to eventually interface with and interact with, they basically have been rendered and they appear in existence like completely arbitrarily, whatever. There's some like back end algorithm that like the host provider of this ecosystem, like they know what's generating this stuff. But if I'm interacting with a non-arbitrarily generated virtual environment or ecosystem, it's something new or like, something doesn't exist for some reason. And I have to figure out, what pattern is this asset associated to determine like, when is it going to re-enter this economy and when can I interface with it again? Like that is a whole new experience.
That's right.
It's a whole new product outcome of things being built under this protocol umbrella. Right.
Yeah. And on top of that, Frank to Gods, and there's been other occurrences where, projects they arbitrarily expand their ecosystem and it gets met with like pitchforks and knives and like the guns come out.
Yeah, it's tough, dude.
And so as a creator, what are you supposed to do? It's like just be on Twitter all day as like a picture project and just like all caps it all day forever. Like how, if you're a creator, you want to create more stuff.
Yeah,
you want to do more things. And the fact that they can't do it is an issue.
Yeah, totally.
And so what I like about DMT is that if it expands non-arbitrarily.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's not up to the creator. It's not up to the community. It just expanded. Like it is what it is. And nobody can get mad at that because when you entered into the ecosystem, you understood the rules.
Correct. Yeah, totally. So let's jump into the NATRIX now. I think we got probably like 30 minutes left.
Yeah.
So we were just talking about, the product of DMT utilization providing a new experience, right? Something that the market hasn't seen before. So you see that with like the UNet collections and stuff like NatCats. Like this is a little different. I haven't been exposed to a PFP project that, isn't just arbitrarily, the existence is arbitrarily determined to be 10,000 and it's stuck at that. And like you're saying, if anybody tries to ruffle with that expectation, it's usually met with disastrous results. So that is a very like ecosystem defining flaw, like in the NFT space,
Right.
and doing things arbitrarily, right? So introducing this non-arbitrary vertical into like digital manifestation. Now we have like a shared understanding of things are much more dynamic now.
Yeah.
Not just dynamic, like it's not just some line of code that some dev cooked up.
Yeah.
Just to like make things a little more spicy, right? It's like, this is all dependent on Bitcoin data, right? And if you understand the, like that is the thing that you were talking about earlier. That's the real thing.
Yeah.
Right. Those pattern occurrences, like the elements that lock in with that, like,
that is
that's the
absolutely real thing.
Why? Because that's actually happening on Bitcoin, right? Like you're saying, that's the real thing to be paying attention to if you want to build anything off of, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And so, I mean, think about if we're discovering, what's real, right? Which is the data within the Bitcoin blockchain. And we're saying, hey, let's take that information and let's make a metaverse out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's call it Bitmap. And the transactions within a block, that's going to be how many parcels are within that bitmap. It's like, that is very real, right? You could create a metaprotocol called Bitmap and just create an entire non-arbitrary metaverse in a way that hasn't been done before, right? That's a very cool thing. And it's a very new thing. No one's ever done this before.
Yeah.
And so this is an example of the result of that. It's like we just built this because we agree that this is a very cool thing, and we just happen to have the ability to actually do it. Yeah. Right. And so what you're looking at here is the NATRIX, and so this is non-arbitrarily divided by its transactions. The transaction size gives you these different square meters of the parcel sizes that exist within this NATRIX. And with this ability to parcelize as a child inscription of a bitmap, owners will be able to build on top of their parcel. And so now we have like a giant place of people building at the same time.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to demonstrate now because we need more developers here alongside with us to kind of like be cooking up individually. But that's going to be in live demonstration here pretty soon once the NATRIX LDE event occurs. So
yeah,
no hard date on that, guys, but expect it pretty soon, right? And there's not going to be some crazy, I guess, like marketing campaign leading up to this.
Nah.
It's probably just going to drop like literally out of thin air. We'll probably just like internally select the block height, and it'll be as non-arbitrary as everything else, right? Once it hits, it fucking hits, dude. The NATRIX is here.
Yeah.
And LDE can occur. So can outline that process of the LDE so for people to kind of understand, first of all, what is an LDE?
Yeah.
Right? And then like why are LDEs important in the context of this bitmap, right? Because bitmap's been around for a year, right?
Right.
And since the very beginning, the Bitmap Theory outlined the idea of these non-arbitrarily generated districts, and within them are these parcels, right? So if you have any background of like metaverse experience, this is a very like common thing. Like, you have a virtual world with like segmented layers of ownership for the land.
Yeah.
Right. But up until now, it's always been arbitrary. So this is a non-arbitrary way of achieving that through the utilization of Bitcoin block data. But it's been a year and nobody has like fully distributed a single bitmap yet with their parcels.
Correct.
So why is that the case, and why will it happen this time?
Yeah. So we have this idea, LDE, land distribution event. It's like, okay, we need to come up with a mechanism to be able to distribute these parcels, because Bitmap is a community generation like device. Yeah. That's what it is. Right. And in the context of like Bitmap, it's a community generation device, but in the context of a 3D environment. Yeah. So typically we've seen community generation devices that look like images called PFPs. Mm-hmm. Well, now in this case, it's a 3D metaverse.
PFPs or meme tokens or whatever. That's like the killer production, I think, of like what crypto has enabled is, people can spin up these new tokenized things, creations, and onboard a large number of people
Yeah.
that are typically aligned towards some kind of common goal, right? But that hasn't really like been a thing in the metaverse concept.
No,
right?
it hasn't.
Not yet. Right.
Yeah, and there's been attempts, but those attempts are one-off in the sense that it's one person's image of the metaverse, and it's not necessarily the right way to build the metaverse in a lot of ways, potentially. And we've only had a handful of attempts. And so what's cool about Bitmap is that this commoditizes metaverse creation, metaverse generation, metaverse attempts.
Mm-hmm.
And so now anybody can take this substrate layer, this like basic meta protocol called Bitmap, and then all of a sudden create whatever they think the metaverse should be about, and figure out a ways to make it sustainable and all that stuff.
Yeah, so that's very loaded, right, in itself. It's just like you just get hold of one of these things and like you're off to the races, right?
Yeah,
So building a virtual sustainable ecosystem that fulfills like some aligned purpose for all of us participants, right? It's definitely not as easy to pull off as like you can kind of achieve those same like expectations through like a meme coin, right? It's like if we all think this is funny, we all think dogs are cute, right? It's like So if you agree on these two principles, mint here's a button, buy this thing, and then now we got 50,000 of us now after this thing minted out,
right?
Now it's like, all right, now what, right?
Yeah.
I guess we're just gonna like all collectively just like try and convince everybody else that like dogs are cute and this is like funny.
Yeah,
and that's the extent of like what value gets produced of that. It's just you just onboard more people
right
into that like belief, right? And then therefore number go up, right? Like that is what meme coins do. Our big criticism of that is like no actual tangible value is like produced at the end of that typically, right?
Yeah.
It's just number go up. If they succeed in that like onboarding of people, number typically go down.
Yeah.
And it's like people no longer care.
And then there's like a whole new set of people who just like hate the fact that number went down, and they just like spread hate all day, every day.
Pretty much. Yeah, it's an interesting little dynamic for sure. That's part of our crypto market. But we're saying here, like in the metaverse, it has like a different medium.
There's like a shared goal. Right. So the shared goal of like a dog token is like it's funny and it's cute, and if more people believe that, the number will go up and everybody will be happy.
Yeah.
And then with enough time, there's going to be a whole host of people who are unhappy because number went down.
Yeah.
But then the antithesis of that is like, here's the metaverse. It's like, let's all let's all get together and have this shared goal of creating a sustainable ecosystem. As complex, as difficult as that sounds, at least there's something to do there.
Yeah, at least something interesting like to start out with, right? Like sustainability, I don't think will be figured out that quickly. I mean, because we've been dealing with the metaverse space for years now, and it's one of the more difficult things to achieve. It requires an insane level, I think, of developer contribution and adoption in order to like arrive to that point.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, you could still leverage these tools that Bitmap provide, like the parcels, to at least achieve the beginning most important aspect, right? Is the onboarding a community. That there's nothing more important than that, because with that comes liquidity, with that comes shared interest, and like we're saying, these alignment principles that get people all like excited and invigorated to construct this metaverse thing, right?
Yeah.
Which has so many different interpretations as far as like where is the value going to come from. But nonetheless, like let's start there. Like let's actually distribute these parcels, and let's get people in, and let's get this alignment. Like actually this on the what's it called? On the road?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's set sail.
Instead of like this show, like let's get the alignment on the road, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so did we define? So that's why we think an LDE is important, right? And
so there's two problems with
everything you just said, right?
With everything, yeah.
There's the LDE part and the creation part.
Yeah. So the LDE is a distribution mechanism for parcels, right? But the other problem is like, well, okay, I got this parcel, but what am I supposed to do with it?
Yeah, how are we supposed to build together?
And then on top of that, it's like, what's the incentive to even parcelize? Like, what are we, like, why even do it at all? Like, that's the other problem. It's like, we need to incentivize people to actually parcelize. And so they need something to do, right? And so that's something to do for the early adopters or for the developers to actually start creating stuff so that you can create these little applications in the form of UNATs, and people can purchase and deploy these UNATs across different parcels and different bitmaps. Right.
Yeah. So that's a whole separate thing. So the NATRIX initially will probably more demographic wise be focused on developers, right? So once these parcels are distributed out, now if you own them, you can interface with this parcel editing tool, right?
Yeah.
So is that something we can demonstrate here? Like how to actually, what will be the interface at minimum? Like people when they load in.
So upon the LDE, so when that land distribution event occurs, what people are purchasing are these parcels, right? And so once you get a parcel, on day one, you can start editing that parcel. So what does that look like? So here I'm on parcel 1690. And so you go up here and you click on this icon, and then you type in 1690. And then now, right now, this is sort of like a front end interface for us to test. But if you own 1690, you don't have to type anything. You just like, you click it from your inventory 1690, and then you can start editing. So now you have like an editing interface. It's like, okay, so what can I do here? So HTML and JavaScript, you can use those frameworks and you can pretty much build out anything that you've seen on the internet.
Yeah.
Right. And so we've seen some pretty cool things on the internet, right, I-Man?
Pretty cool. Like, I would say so.
Like, you're running around as a nat cat, dude.
Yeah, I just switched clothes, pretty much. Yeah. I got tired of being like this.
UNAT ready guy?
Yes, this walking billboard guy. Like, I wanted to be in my UNAT form here. So.
Yeah, and so so this NatCat is actually pretty interesting because this is completely a unique asset. This is everything about it is unique. So there's no other NatCat that looks exactly alike, right?
Yeah, it's just the 3D version of the 2D UNAT, right?
Yeah, and so there was a script generated to build out this 3D avatar, and all the NatCats are going to be unique, right? And so this is part of another framework that we're developing called UAV, a unique avatar, and so anyone can come up with their own version of an avatar. It doesn't have to be a NatCat or any of the existing D&T assets. You create your own, and then of course do use mscribe to kind of distribute those assets as UNATs. But so that's like its own thing, right? But that's just like an avatar, right? So we're talking about building land here. So going back to the land build feature, right? We're at 1690. So you can start editing content here, and I'm just going to paste this data, and you can see here, this is just straight HTML stuff. And then you preview changes, and all of a sudden you're editing that land, right? And so now I can go up and say, let me find this duck right here. See, it has a Z of -2. So let me just remove that. And then I can just preview changes again. And then all of a sudden the duck changed. So what you're doing here is like real-time editing of that land.
Yeah. Yeah. Editing, creation, whatever, right? Like this is probably going to be the preferred like creator experience. Like if you want to build out new assets, right? New metas, you'll probably be doing that on your parcel, right? And if you're a developer,
right,
you'll probably have multiple parcels. So if you could build out different assets of different scales and stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting, dude, because we kind of like witnessed like the very MVP version of this, like all coming together with just like us developing on this parcel over here, I think.
Yeah.
And then randomly as things were being built, not this stuff, it was like other stuff.
Yeah.
Other like another meta. So somebody who knows, who has access to this, just logged in at the same time and just started basically doing the same thing right here, right? So it was me as a witness to that. We saw two side-by-side parcels, two developers building their own unique content, right? And I was like, dude, this is pretty fucking cool, because all I did is like turned around, like look at the rest of these parcels. Like same thing could be happening
Yeah.
throughout these entire bitmaps, right? And like that's kind of the point, because this whole metaverse thing, it's in dire need of creators and developers, builders, all that stuff, right? So
Yeah.
we need to build the right primitives in order to, again, align these people to start basically building out like the proper infrastructure for future devs, right? And why is that important? Because for us users, that's what's going to result in us like coming into a virtual place that has something for us to do and something for us to engage with, and
Yeah.
some actual value being produced here, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's important that we start giving the tools to developers to start creating this stuff, because what this represents is a new value proposition for creators to sell, to be able to sustain themselves, be creative, and start building for the metaverse, right? So these assets are going to be completely, or they can be done in a UNAT format, like a unique non-arbitrary token. So you can actually create like an application right within the world, and you can wrap that application as a UNAT, as a script, and then you can sell this on the blockpad and start being having ways to contribute that is sustainable, right? And so if you can't do that, then the metaverse is not going anywhere.
Yeah, correct.
And so, Bitmap commoditizes the metaverse creation. Bitmap OS commoditizes the development of the land. And then we can start figuring out like an economic layer that sustains everybody. I think it was yesterday, we were on a Twitter space where we were discussing in the economic layer of Bitmap that it requires an alignment between the landowners, the creators, and the participants of the ecosystem.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't do that, there's no way Bitmap or any other metaverse gets off the ground. And there isn't a metaverse that has solved that issue.
Correct. Yeah, so that's pretty much a summary of like what it is that will be offered here.
And not only that, a summary of the last 5 years of our existence in the metaverse.
Yeah, if you literally can just, I don't think there's a human on earth who could do this, but like go back from the very beginning of this channel.
Yeah.
And just like, I don't know, I guess watch every like metaverse relevance video. There's probably hundreds of them, right?
Yeah. Easily.
Yeah, easily hundreds of them. Like from the very beginning of where we discovered Decentraland back in 2019, I think, right?
Yeah.
And to the points where we deployed the first like actual virtual application is very similar to like this game over here. This thing that's just like the floors. It wasn't similar, but not like this. It was a different type of game. It was the first functional application that was deployed in a Web3 metaverse. Right, it had a multiplayer backend connected to it, just like this one, and that's what kind of got the whole show started. Right, it's like this is the type of content that the metaverse is sorely going to be needing. Right, so we probably should have a framework for this stuff. We probably should figure out a way to create a platform where creators can make these things and monetize them. Right, so that's what brought MetaZone into the equation.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is how you align developers with landowners, right? It's like now I can host this content, and these things can charge users for interacting with it, and users can be rewarded for doing that by earning different forms of content, whether avatars, wearables, whatever, right? So like it's a whole closed-looped ecosystem here, right? It's not easy to pull off, but it can be done for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the metaverse is pretty complicated. It can be and probably should be as complicated as the real simulation that we're in right now.
Confirmed already? Or
we're
after
in a row.
After you saw that Minecraft video, it's like for sure we're in a simulation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just the scale of Minecraft. It's like, what is it?
It's the surface area of Minecraft is like,
it's like light years.
Yeah. It's like light years in size.
Yeah, it's something crazy, right?
It's like 27 light years or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that from a distance standpoint, that's quite large.
Yeah. So it's like if we can achieve that, in like just like this modern day of like video game rendering, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like some crazy civilization.
Minecraft was created 15 years ago.
Was it? Same time as Bitcoin?
Uh-oh. Is Notch? Is Notch?
Notch is Satoshi, dude.
Yeah, I think he is.
That's wild. That would be so crazy. Obviously not true, but I mean, could be. Why not?
Imagine that, dude.
Yeah, that's not how it happened, dude.
Yeah, Notch sold
Yeah, he was the
sold
creator of
Minecraft
Minecraft
for like $2 billion or something like that. I remember at the time I was like mind blowing.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why? Because he sold too early, or what?
No,
There's
because
just some anon dev.
because
indie dev?
Microsoft wanted it for $2 billion. And it was like, holy shit.
That's a good point. Yeah, I was like, well, what did they
That's
see in this thing? I
so
guess there was a
insane.
ton of kids playing, right?
There was, yeah.
Yeah, Microsoft made some good moves, dude. Real good
They
moves.
definitely did.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, like we said earlier, there's no hard date for this release, but just I guess stay plugged in, right?
Yeah. Follow the Twitter account because that's where the drop's gonna happen.
Yeah. So what should people expect once that announcement is made?
Maybe a video and a tweet.
Probably more like a link to like
And a link.
mscribe. What's it called? LDE interface, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you participated in the block pad, it's very similar. The only difference is that it looks like a bitmap instead of just like straight squares.
More specifically, it looks like this, exactly like this bitmap. It is this bitmap.
It is this bitmap, yeah.
Right. And so as you're minting the individual squares on the mscribe interface, you're literally claiming these individual parcels. So they're numbered here. So like, and it's 1 for 1, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, what that entitles you to is exactly what Satoshi was expecting it to, like
That's
a
right.
year ago when Bitmap was first introduced, right? It's like now
Yeah.
you own the parcel, you own the rights to build on that parcel.
Yeah.
Right?
Hopefully he sees this and he was like, yes, finally.
This is it. This is somebody finally fucking did it, dude.
Finally. Yeah, dude.
Yeah, it's crazy that it hasn't happened yet. It's been a year, but I think there's been many different types of interpretations as far to how to utilize bitmap, but this one is as true as it gets to the actual, like, what a bitmap is.
Yeah.
Because it's actually a bitmap.
Yeah. I mean, isn't this what's supposed to happen?
I think so. I don't know. Maybe we're wrong. I guess Invisible Hand will decide. Is this what bitmap was supposed to be?
Yeah.
This is how we think it should be, right? And
No, this is Bitmap Theory in its production.
right.
This is exactly what it needs to be, dude.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, so you guys join in whenever this drops. We'll be probably making a lot of content as far as like how to get started with all this stuff, how to onboard, and start building. Right?
Yeah. Speaking of building, so it's like, Will, you just said HTML and JavaScript. I don't know what the hell that is.
Yeah.
It's like, well, our friend ChatGPT, it will help you immensely here. And literally just talk with it and say, I don't know anything about HTML and JavaScript, but I want to build with these tools. It's like, can you start me off? It's like, here you go. And it's like copy and paste it into the land and see what it gives you. It's like, hey, ChatGPT, you gave me 2D stuff. Can you make 3D stuff with this? It's like, yes, I can. And you just keep going back and forth.
Interesting. All right, let's see if people actually like heed that advice. And if not, there's going to be a market of content that's being produced by people who do know this stuff, which is kind of the point, right?
Yeah.
And that market, people can price these things for free and just distribute them. Maybe some of this stuff will be block dropped, actually, some of these metas.
Yeah.
Actually, for sure, some metas will be block dropped to people.
That reminds me, dude. So this video is going to be out on Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
and the first block drop is finally in the books. Scheduled, at least.
What do you mean?
EV is doing the block drop on Tuesday.
Oh, that's right.
So 3 days from today.
Okay. So, yeah, that's going to be the first actual, like, distribution, right?
Yeah.
Or claim distribution, at least through mscribe. So that should be interesting. People are going to get their assets, and that should set the stage for like how to utilize block drops. And again, so now you could start producing this NATRIX content.
Yeah.
As a developer, as a creator, whatever. So we still need to implement a few things, right? Like the actual framework for how to like wrap this 3D content into a UNet.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
man.
So there's a lot of things still. Like this isn't a completed version.
No,
at all.
It's not. But on day one, you can at least start building, right? So the product is there.
Yeah, we're gonna be there with you guys as you guys are creating, and that's the whole point. You guys are gonna help us like outline what needs to be incorporated in this framework.
Yeah, and also we want to host Twitter Spaces in this realm as well, right? We want to like actually use this how it's supposed to be used.
You mean like actually
create a community
through the metaverse?
through the metaverse.
Hell yeah, dude! Finally,
It's unheard of, dude.
yeah, I'm getting sick of Twitter. Actually,
Yes,
I actually very
same.
much do not like Twitter.
Same.
I so much more prefer to be like this, my digital.
Your vector of communication.
Yeah, at least for the community sense, right?
I agree.
At least, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we can get it, by the way, you can jump into this world with your cell phone and with your tablet, right? You don't need like a super rig.
Yeah.
Even
That's good news.
even though your phone is kind of like a super rig. I mean, they're pretty powerful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess so. More details will again come through our block owner account leading up to the
Yes.
LDE whenever that happens. So, or maybe it'll probably just be shotgun blasted literally all at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. So I remember what I forgot.
What'd you forget?
So Evie's doing the block drop on Tuesday. On Monday, Bitminer is going to be opened up for like the remaining sale.
Okay.
So it's going to be open to the public.
Mm.
Right. So that's happening on Monday.
Okay. So that'll be the blockpad mint continuation essentially for
Yeah.
Bitminers. Okay.
Yeah. So Bitminers is a very cool thing. It is the first application that is deployable on a bitmap. Right. So they've done it, and they're doing it in the Foxyverse. And so their mint has been happening over the last couple of days as of today.
Yeah.
And so now it's going to be opened up to the public on Monday.
Yeah, and we've been talking, I guess, through Twitter Spaces, different ways to incorporate Bitminer's presence through the metas, through like the form of a meta within the Bitmap OS environments, right? So
Yeah.
that can absolutely be achieved.
Yeah. For example, let's say you're running around in here and you're like, hey, how's my Bitminer doing in the Foxyverse? There could be a block drop to all Bitminers that have compatibility to this environment that you're looking at. And you could deploy that block drop into your parcel. And that block drop could be as simple as like this duck that when you click on it, it gives you the interface of your progress of your Bitminer in the Foxyverse.
Correct.
Right. And so,
or it could just have it on display like at all times. Right.
Yeah, it could. But you're talking about like API calls, and
hey man,
you don't want to do real-time API calls because first it can't do it, but second it'd be
it would
a drain.
Then it would just have like, I guess, an old interface display, and I guess as you walk up to it, or does it actually have to be like
you click on
of a button?
You click
it's
on
the most efficient way.
Yeah, I mean,
okay. Just saying, dude. Obviously,
we gotta work within the realms of the physics, dude, and money,
right,
and cost issues.
Okay,
right.
But nonetheless, the idea is to have that experience still intertwined with what you're doing here.
Yeah,
like we could still be playing this game and still have still get awareness, I guess, of like the activities of another metaverse, essentially.
Yeah, and so think about what I just said. It's like you're doing an API call to your Bitminer, and well, who's to say you can't use an API call to like check the weather, right, in your local area, right? Or API call to order a pizza, right? You should build that, and you should be able to deploy that. So
I agree. Domino's machine, dude. Domino's meta.
Yeah.
That's actually very possible too. I've seen it before.
Sounds familiar.
It's coming back.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for us. So we have on Monday Bitminer open purchase. Then on Tuesday the first block drop, and then after Tuesday there's going to be a ton more block drops available. And then at some point, maybe next week, LDE. Who knows when? Just pay attention to Twitter.
All right.
All right.
Good. All right. Yeah, it's gonna be exciting. See you guys in there.
Yeah, dude.
Probably the next time we record this, maybe we'll tell everybody. It's like, dude, we're gonna record a podcast, right? So it's like everybody log in
world. Ooh.
Start fucking around with your parcels, so we can kind of like really showcase like what this is all about, right?
Yeah.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, that is cool. All right, guys, that's it for us. If we missed anything in this podcast, let us know in the comment section below. Appreciate you guys for watching, and we'll catch you in the next podcast.
Peace.